And if you're like many Americans around the world, you are looking at open enrollment right now. And how do you juggle all that? Well, in an average year, there's a lot to juggle. But this year, there are some big changes. And joining us from FSA Store, it's my friend Shawna Hausman. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. I love being here in the basement.
I'm so happy you could hang out with us.
I'm always up for a good basement hang. I mean, it's like reminds me of the early '90s, listening to Nine Inch Nails in my parents' Connecticut basement. I love it. I love it.
That is fantastic. Any Nine Inch Nails reference is good here. So, but this year is not like most years, though, Shawna. People are going to open up their open enrollment packet, and they might have some surprises.
That's right. This is an interesting year. Obviously, last year was an unusual year in many ways. There have been a lot of legislative changes, and the big thing to really understand when you're looking at an FSA or an HSA, but in this case, really we're talking about FSAs, which have that use it or lose it attribution. They have that thing that really makes them unique. There were a lot of changes last year in various legislative bills that were passed, and it gave things that happened where, employers were given the option to really extend your deadline. So, everyone has this annual deadline, you got to use your dollars. But all of a sudden, to kind of benefit the employees, there were these options where employers could extend the deadline. They could also extend a grace period. They could roll over some of your money from one year to the next. There were all of these different options put on the table, and it was really up to the employer. So, you might have money that you contributed in 2020 that all of a sudden you thought it was gone, but it might still be there. So you're trying to figure out, what do you want to contribute this year for your program, and what do you want to put in there? And you may have hundreds of dollars sitting in there already. So until you figure out what you've got still from last year, you don't really know what you want to contribute this year. So there's all of these complexities.
Wow. Well, and before we get to really what's changed this year, just a general framework for people, because there might be people that started, we had the Great Resignation this year. A lot of people changing companies. Maybe they're looking at a whole different benefits package than they had before. If I open up my FSA enrollment packet and I'm looking at these flexible dollars, do you have kind of a framework for people to kind of go in? How do I think about this in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think, people probably don't even really understand how broadly they can really use these dollars. And this is a great tax benefit for people. It's a way to really reduce your taxable income, use those pre-tax dollars to improve your health, improve your lifestyle. So, generally people start with a couple things. Like they say, how often am I going to go to the doctor? I know I can use these FSA dollars for copays. Then they might say, all right, I have contacts or I got glasses. I know I can cover that with those. So that's maybe they'll add that into their list. They're going to make a spreadsheet. What do I think I'm going to use? Then you might say, all right, I know I can pay the copay on my prescriptions, right? So if I have monthly prescriptions, let me add that to my list. And that's generally as far as people get. They don't really think about the broader use of these programs. So they might say, I'm going to put a couple $100s in there. Let's call it a day. But you can really contribute, over $2,000 to these programs as an individual. And that, that doubles when you're talking about a family. And I think people really don't understand that you can use these for services and goods in a much bigger way. So
what would that mean? Give me some examples.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say, you hurt your back and you're seeing a chiropractor. Sometimes chiropractic visits are covered. Sometimes they're not. It really depends on your health insurance. But you can pay for those visits, whether it's just the copay or the full payment, with your FSA dollars. You can get acupuncturist and pay for that. If you're thinking about having a child and you're thinking maybe you want to get a doula or a midwife, you can pay for that with your FSA. And that's just, thinking about the different services that are out there. And there's hundreds of these. You can come to our website and see, we have a list we call our eligibility list. You can do a lot of research on what is covered. I think people did, because you can save a lot of money using these pre-tax dollars for these services. But then also, if you come to a website like FSA Store or our sister site HSA Store, when you're shopping with, you have these programs and you want to buy products, we have over 5,000 products that are eligible. People don't really even realize they can use this money on everyday products. So some of the legislative changes that happened last year where different categories got added, things that were really more, I would call them these highly consumable products, things like skincare products, sunscreens, anything with an active ingredient, things like a neosporin that you would use on a regular basis. feminine care items, which people spend, women will spend over $60 a year on feminine care items.
I remember us doing a story about that last year. That was a big one last year.
Huge for people. I mean, you're going to use that every month, right? I mean, over-the-counter medication, that was a big change last year. So now, any kind of over-the-counter meds that you use, people will spend over $300 a year for their family on over-the-counter meds. You think about, children's medications, you think about allergy meds that you may take, painkillers, et cetera. All of that can be purchased with your FSA account. So
when you're looking at, because you talked about framework first, we're looking at the health insurance that we're gonna dive into. Yep. You mentioned your sister site, the HSA store. Is there anybody, and we're seeing HSAs in more and more programs, yes. right? Very quick implementation lately. I feel like it took forever to get to like step 2, and then all of a sudden now it's running really quickly.
That's right.
Is there somebody who really should not consider an HSA? Is there anybody who really should go, you know what, that's shouldn't even be on the table for me?
No, I mean, I think an HSA is a great program to look at. The one caveat is that you do have to be in a high deductible health plan. So, if you're looking at your health insurance options and a high deductible isn't right for you, if you think you're going to have, let's say, some pretty large health expenses coming up, like a big surgery, you're going to want to look at your health insurance very carefully and see if the high deductible plan will cover everything that you need. But, for a lot of people who don't have a lot of health, costs every year, high deductible is a great way to save some money. And the employer loves it. You pick that because it saves them money too, right? So then what will often happen is if you sign up for an HSA, which in many ways is very similar to the FSA, but the great benefit is the money does not expire. So when you sign up for that HSA, you're getting really a triple tax benefit. You get the money pre-tax going in. It's accruing interest, and that's something that you can think of almost as a retirement account. So it's accruing interest all those years. And when you're using that money later on in your life, when you're using it for health expenses, it's also untaxed. So it is really it's a really kind of a investment vehicle.
Yeah.
So, but if you're also an average American who isn't necessarily saving that money for retirement, it also can act exactly like an FSA. But, sometimes employers, to really incentivize you to pick that high deductible plan, they'll say, okay, do the HSA, and we're actually going to contribute money on your behalf. So, they might put a couple $1,000s in. You're not even contributing that money, but you're using it like the FSA. You can buy those over-the-counter meds. You can go to the doctor, use it for copays, all of that. But they're actually giving you that allotment of money to help you offset your expenses, knowing that the HSA may not cover as much as a typical PPO.
I told you before we actually hit record that I've got these strict segments, and if we go over 10 minutes, I'm in trouble.
I know.
Looking at the clock, we're at 8 minutes. Thank God we've got YouTube where we can extend this a little bit. So don't feel like you're pressured for time. We got plenty of time, but we do have 3 big changes that you sent me ahead of time. Yeah. The first one, you said your FSA spending deadline might have changed. Tell me about that.
That's right. So your deadline is set by your employer. But with the legislative changes, they could have changed that deadline and extended it a year. So you may think that your deadline for your last year money was December 31st. That's a very common deadline for people to have, December 31st, 2020. And then all of a sudden your employer may have changed that and said, you know what, we're going to give you an extra 12 months. That money doesn't actually expire until December 31st, 2021. And when we took a poll of our current customers and said, are you aware if your deadline changed? 50% of people said, we have no idea. People don't even know. Did you get it? We say, did you get an email from your HR team? Did you get an email from your benefits administrator? People are confused. They're like, I didn't even know this was a thing. And on the other side, people are sometimes hearing about the legislative changes and saying, oh, deadlines don't exist anymore. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have a deadline anymore. That's also not true. There are deadlines still. It may have shifted. But again, it's up to your employer. So you have to really get educated. You got to talk to your employer. You should really shoot an email. I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. Shoot an email to your HR team and say, what is my deadline? What is the deal? Did you roll over some of the money? Did the deadline change? There's often grace periods for using your money. Even if people have a December 31st deadline, in a normal year, there might be a grace period. Your employer might say, you really have until March 15th to use it up. Some of those grace periods could have shifted out. So this money could still be sitting in your account. you think it's long gone from last year, and you may still have it sitting there, and you're still contributing this year. So you may have really double money to use.
It's fantastic opportunities.
Which is great, but don't let it go to waste. The Americans, every year, American employees are wasting. They're letting over $400 to $500 million are being forfeited. This is serious money we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So I'm not just out here because it's, hey, make my business better, come shop. I see people literally losing hundreds, thousands of dollars a year. And it kills me. I'm like, this is money. You could go buy all your sunscreen for next summer. You don't know what you're going to do with it. Go buy some Advil, buy some Tylenol, put it in the closet. It is going down the drain. And I know that this is your hot topic. I mean, no, you don't want to let these dollars go to waste. I mean, it's at the least, you're annoyed. You're like, oh, I just lost a couple $100. It's frustrating. For some people, that money that they're losing, that they don't realize is going out down the drain, I mean, that's putting food on the table for a week. For a lot of Americans, that is a very big difference, in their lifestyle. Those couple $100, $1,000, that's big money. It's real money.
It just puts a pit in my stomach when I hear that stuff. And by the way, I don't think that the people that are in HR that I know of are not going to get angry at you for saying shoot an email. Every HR person I talk to, Shawna, says people don't contact us enough. They don't ask us enough about what's going on. Like, they're constantly talking about all the benefits that companies have available that nobody uses.
I know.
So to your point, people's wasting money by not even checking out their HR programs. Second, you say eligibility for FSAs has changed a lot.
The eligibility, for the most part, that is.
Oh, this talks about the different things that are eligible.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. The products that are eligible, that list is tightly managed by the IRS. We talked about this last year that, these big categories of products were added. We're always out there pounding the pavement to get more things added. We are lobbying hard to get vitamins and supplements added. They are not currently on the eligibility list, but we're added, we're pushing hard for that. We want this money to stretch as far as possible to really improve people's health. So we're out there all the time, like vitamin supplements, insect repellent. I mean, a lot of people get very sick from bug bites, that's something that could really improve, so things like that. We're always looking for new categories. We're always pushing. The big win on OTC, over-the-counter meds, femcare, huge last year, acne products, eczema, skincare. I mean, these are really serious categories of product all the time. If they know that the dollars can be used this way, it's great.
Yeah, and to your point, they'll load up on them if you have extra dollars. I mean,
absolutely.
Load up. Third, we already covered this one. Enrolling in an FSA or an HSA reduces taxable income and helps you save throughout the year. A lot of people talk about, to your point earlier, Shawna, HSA for a lot of people is better than a Roth IRA because of that double tax-free treatment, tax-free on the way in. And if you use it correctly, tax-free on the way out. Could be the number one place to save.
Yes. And, and you can just put that money away right out of your paycheck. You don't even have to think about it. Like I said, your employer will often contribute to it. So you're getting this into the account. And that just compounds every year. I mean, if you can afford to put that money away, use it as a vehicle. It is really one of the most undervalued savings vehicles. I think people just don't know.
I totally agree.
Don't
Absolutely.
fear the HSA and don't fear the FSA. They can really be your best friend.
Don't fear the HSA. I think that's what we'll call this episode. Don't fear the
FSA. Yeah, I know. People are afraid to lose their people, I think, say, you know what, I did an FSA where, in my 20s, I did one, I put colors in, I forgot to use it. It was a waste of money. It was a waste of time. Yes, you have to really pay a little more attention, do a little bit of calculating on what you think your health expenses are going to be, track of it a little. Actually on our site, we just launched a new tool called Deadlines. So when you're in open enrollment, right, if you're signing up for your health insurance right now and you're picking your FSA, signing up, it's telling me my deadline is December 31st. Go to sign up for a deadline alert and put in my deadline is December 31st. about this program all year long, and I'm going to send you an email 2 months before it expires. You got 2 months left to use your money. Go in there and spend it. Don't let it go to waste. So let us do the work for you. Then it's a little bit of a safety net.
I love that, by the way. That is a big key. And of course, Mom is blowing leaves right outside the basement window as we speak. So
oh, Mom,
can't do it any other time. So of course I'm supposed to be the one doing it, and I'm here talking to you, but we can't let that point go that, people talk about discipline, Shawna. It really has a lot more to do with, I mean, she's right outside the window now, has a lot to do with actually, your, oh my God, I completely lost my train of thought. Luckily, we can edit this. Hold on a second.
That's great.
Holy crap. He's literally right here.
It's not as loud on my end as it probably is on your end, but
it only happens when I'm doing interviews too. I can hear it screaming in my ear. All right. I think I can.
That's all right. Should we talk about an off-topic thing? You want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons? I just listened to your Dungeons and Dragons episode. It was great. I'm willing to bet you got a lot of engagement on that episode. It is making a comeback big time.
That dude, John, after we finished talking, John told me that Dungeons and Dragons is way, way, way bigger now. Not even making a comeback. It's way, way, way bigger than it's ever been.
It is. I think that the pandemic brought it back because, my husband started playing with his buddies online.
Yeah.
And then other friends of ours heard that he was really into it. Now I'm sucked into this couple's Dungeons and Dragons game. So I'm now a level 2 elf. I'm a level 2 paladin elf with magical powers that was stolen from my royal elf family at birth by the goblins and sold to the orcs. And now I'm on this mission of vengeance. Again, I mean, this is my life now. This is what's happened.
So awesome. What's funny is that I have not gotten back into it, and not because I don't want to, but because, as you know, it is such a time suck.
Oh my God. I've lost my husband to it every Tuesday night. I can't talk to him for 3 days beforehand. He's planning it all out.
We do board game nights. So now I stick with, I stick with games that are, hold on. I stick with games like Marco Polo here. This is a really fun game, but
I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah, but we stick with these because it's 90 minutes and we're done. Mostly because I can't do a 6-month campaign of
well, it's 6 months. It never ends.
I'm interviewing this guy.
It needs to be a lot of tequila for me.
I'm interviewing this guy in an hour. We have a board game episode on Black Friday every year, and he's got this cool game. I don't know if you ever played a game called Dominion. I don't know if you ever played Dominion.
I think I have. Yes, I think I have.
Yeah, where you're kind of building a deck of cards and you're buying cards and you're building up the deck. This is based on Dominion.
Okay.
And it's a super good game, but it's Ben Franklin, so we got to interview that guy.
That's cool. Do you ever play Train Dominoes? Do you know what I'm talking about? Train Dominoes?
Yes. Yes.
I love that game. But
yes, my parents got us sucked into that too.
It's like a whole weekend commitment. Like you basically if you're away for the weekend with friends, it just takes the whole weekend. But no, that's really fun too.
If you guys are ever coming through Texarkana, just call me and we'll set up a game night for the
absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. Where are you out of, by the way?
I'm in Brooklyn. Hence the resurgence of Dungeons. It's very hipster, the Dungeons and Dragons thing is
when we saw that book was coming out. So this is some backstory on that, and we can go because he's around the other side. But he, when we saw that book was coming out, because we use a thing called NetGalley that tells us all the upcoming books. Okay. And we saw that was coming out. We're like, oh my God, this is great. But we had to convince his publicist that it was a fit. His publicist, a great woman named Helen, was like, this is about Dungeons and Dragons and you have a money show. I'm like, I know.
You're like,
Dungeons and Dragons. This is huge money.
Follow the money, right? Follow the money.
It is huge money. But anyway, all right. Here we go. We'll get back into it and I remember my point. All right. 3, 2, 1. I don't want to let this point go though, Shawna, which is that a lot of people talk about discipline to the point of your tool. It's about automation. The more you can automate this stuff so that it just works and you don't have to think about it time and time again, tools like yours, that's fantastic. But I will bet at FSAstore.com or HSA store, you might have a few more tools. I'm just betting, maybe.
We've got a couple. We've got a couple up our sleeve. Yes, when you're trying to plan how much to contribute, we have tools that help you do this. So you can come on and, you start to, it really helps you get the juices flowing. Like, what am I going to be spending money on this year? And like I said, there are things you may not even realize are eligible. It will help you to do that, to plan that out. You're like, oh, I go to acupuncturist, I do this and that. You can add it all in, and it will help you kind of estimate what you think you'll use. If you website and you join our loyalty program, every time you spend money, we'll kind of remind you like, hey, you're gonna get a discount on this in the future. Sign up for our emails. We'll tell you about new products when there's new launches, if a new category were to become eligible. We like to make it easy for people. We're constantly highlighting surprisingly eligible items. You can come in and get a massaging heating pad with 10 speeds, and it's a weighted massaging heating pad. I mean, these things are great, and they're kind of a luxury, but if you have a back pain or something, these can be really a big difference for you. Well,
I can hear Cheryl yelling at me right now in my ear, like get that now.
That's right. That's right.
And by the way, we'll have links on our show notes page at stackiebenjamins.com to everything that Shawna talked about, to HSA store and FSA store, and all of her links. Shawna, thanks for hanging out with us and explaining all the changes, and happy holidays to you.
All right. You too. Nice to see you.